All right. Good evening. The time is now 5:30, and we'll call the November 23rd Lawrence County Council meeting to order. We will begin by the invocation by Councilman Anderson, followed by the pledge of allegiance. All those able, please stand.
Let us pray together. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity you have given us to take part in it. We ask that you will be with us as we assemble to address the concerns of Lawrence County. We ask for your guidance, your patience, and we ask forgiveness of our many sins. And in this season of Thanksgiving, we are just thankful, grateful, and what other adjective we can use to lift up your name and be thankful for what we do have. We ask that we be able to share it among those who do not have and exemplify you in all that we do. And when we leave this place, we ask that you take each of us to our homes where we will find everything at home safe. These blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Move to our agenda tonight. First, we have approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Mr. Tribble, second by Ms. Clark. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Here now, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0. All right, next we have approval of the minutes from the November 9th regular session and the called executive session. Do I have a motion for the approval of both sets of minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the minutes of November the 9th and our regular session, and also our call executive session on November the 9th. With the necessary corrections, if there be any.
Motion by Ms. Anderson. Second by Mr. Carroll. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That's 7-0. Next, we have reports to council. We have Victor Frontroth from the South Carolina Fiscal Affairs Office with us to talk about redistricting. Please join us. Introduce anybody you have with you.
Yes. Good evening, members of council, members of the public. My name is Victor Frontroth. I'm a state cartographer with South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. I'm joined here tonight by Mr. Adam DeMars, and we have a benchmark redistricting report to go over with you tonight. I hope that you've had time to look at this report, digest some of the information in it. It is a lot of information. Redistricting is a very big process in this state. So if you could start by turning to page 2, I'd like to go over some of this information with you. The first thing that we're going to go over tonight is some of the constitutional and statutory requirements that are set forth in redistricting. The first one that I'm going to cover tonight is the 14th Amendment, and this is the one person, one vote and equal protection clause. So if you think of it this way, if you have one district that has 100 people in it, and you have another district, say District 2, that has 200 people in it, that district that has 100 people in it is going to be seen as having more voice than the district with 200 people. And with this exercise, basically you're trying to make it as equal as possible. So that would mean 150 persons per each district, and that provides you with equal representation. Another thing to note is that race is a factor in the redistricting process, but it cannot be the predominant factor in the redistricting process. Later on, we will be going over some of these race breakdowns as provided by the DOJ. How many of you were here, if any of you, for the last redistricting process? Okay, you may have remembered Section 5 of DOJ preclearance. This was deemed unconstitutional, so South Carolina is no longer under Section 5 of DOJ preclearance. That comes good and bad. When you submitted your plan to DOJ, they would give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on your plan. So that gave you an extra layer of protection. Now, without that DOJ preclearance, the burden is now more on the decisions of council as it pertains to a redistricting plan. With that, RFA recommends a 5% deviation, and I will be going over that a little bit more in a little bit. And 10% is your limit. So anything over 10% deviation is going to be deemed unconstitutional. Any redistricting plan is going to be needed to be finalized before your filing date. And this is going to require public input. Public input is a big part in the redistricting process. It will also require 3 readings. Also on page 2, I'm going to go over some of the traditional redistricting principles that need to be followed. The first one is that districts must be drawn contiguously. You cannot have a district that hops over another district, and it has to be all a cohesive group. Another thing is the minimization of splitting any voting precincts. This causes a burden on both voters and the voters' registration. You have different ballot styles. It cannot be done entirely. There will be some split precincts, but we try to minimize that as much as possible to take the burden off the voter and voters' registration alike. Districts, whenever you look at the map, they must pass an eye test. You must be able to look at that district and say it is compact enough. It doesn't have dragon tails coming off of either side. You want it very compact, and you need to be able to look at that and say, that's good. Communities of interest. This is a very, very big thing that we're requesting council to look at, is any communities of interest. This could be a school zone, neighborhood, school district, anything of that nature. Predefine that before the redistricting process so that we have that on record that that is a community of interest. In recent court decisions, it seems that if you do not do that and you come back later on in the process and say, well, I meant that to be a community of interest, if it is not predefined, the courts are not going to take that kindly. Another thing is any court decisions that are about redistricting, keep up to date with those. Those are constantly changing, and any federal and state law that needs to be abided by in relation to the redistricting process. If we turn to page 3, we'll go over some of the statistical analysis based on the 2020 census numbers. The total population of Lawrence has increased 1.51%, and that's from 66,537 to 67,539. With that increase, your goal population is 9,648 per district. So to get that goal population, what you are doing is you're taking your total county population, dividing it amongst the districts, and that's how you get to that 9,648 per district number. Your highest district is over by 1,546 people. That is a 12.02 deviation. So that's a bit high. Your low is your District 6, and that is under by 1,247 people. That's a negative 12.93% deviation. So there will need to be redistricting in this relation. Earlier I said the RFA recommends 5%. Anything over 10% is non-compliant. That is going to be up to the decision of council to make. It's kind of like you're driving down the road. You may be okay going 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. You may be in trouble if you go 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. But that is up to the discretion of council to make, and we're looking forward to hearing those remarks as it is concerned with the deviation range. The next page, if we can flip to that, we have our County Council benchmark from 2020, and I would like to thank members for providing their addresses to make sure that everybody is in the proper district. No PO boxes were used in this. This is a physical address list. So we thank you for that, just to make sure and determine that everybody is in their proper district. And if we turn to page 5, we have our breakdown. These are all your racial breakdowns based on 2020 census numbers. The fields included in this are Hispanic, non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic DOJ black, and non-Hispanic other. These are all DOJ race categories that are used in this analysis. Whenever it pertains to any majority minority districts, we are looking to keep those around 50%, as close to that as possible. If you go and adjust too much, then there are cracking and packing concerns. We want to avoid that as much as possible with the population shifts. This can be cause for voting dilution claims. We want to avoid that as much as possible. And like I said, all of these are broken down by the DOJ race definitions. And if you look at the bottom section, that is your voting age population. So that we're trying to make as minimal movements as possible through this process. We're not rewriting history here. We're trying to move. We're not trying to cause any concern. In conclusion, we would like council to conduct public meetings, discuss this report, and receive input. Any public input, that is a very important topic in this process, is to get that public input, have it recorded, have it documented. And also we ask council to adopt an ordinance and acceptance of any plans or benchmark reports with the traditional principles. This would be continuity, avoidance of voting any voting precincts, compactness of districts to the practical extent, comply with any federal and state laws and court decisions, and draw in respect to any communities of interest. Are there any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
The deviation that's allowed. Deviation that's allowed is deviation from 0, so 5% would be 2.5 plus, 2.5 minus, or is it standard? Is it the amount from the lowest to the highest?
It would,
Or to the benchmark, I'm sorry.
yes, it would be the 2.5 above, 2.5 below. That gets your 5. But 10%, you have up to 10%. Anything over 10% is non-compliant.
Plus 5 minus 5.
Yes.
And so the second question is, are we using the total population, or are we using the voting age population?
You'd be
It may not be
using,
much difference.
you would be using,
Using the total population. Thank you.
but voting age doesn't take it into account.
Any other questions at this time? How many public meetings do you recommend?
That is up to discretion of council. You could go from 1 to 3. Yeah.
All right. And what is the deadlines, our filing date to get this back to you?
Filing date.
With 3 readings. Okay,
That's correct.
Filing date.
Yes.
Filing date for this report or filing date for voting?
Voting.
Date for the next election?
March 16th, I believe.
Advised to have it done before then.
Yes, I have one more thing if I may add. So we at RFA have been working with 35 counties, 17 municipalities through this process. Council has the opportunity to work with us as a whole. We can go through the entire process with you. We can be more of a consulting role, or you can hire your own consultant and we can look over what has been done as it pertains to that. So there's 3 different options that also need to be discussed with council in regards to that.
Well, I personally would love to work with you in your office.
All right.
Is there a cost to that?
Nope.
You better.
And yeah, we do request one singular point of contact. And that one singular point of contact needs to be one that can work with the entire council on this process.
All right. Any input from council on allowing fiscal affairs to help us through this process?
They've always been kind enough to come out and give us a little cushion, give us a little feedback here and there. You have a long-standing person who used to come here all the time, Bobby Bowers. I know y'all remember, y'all don't remember him. Everybody else probably do. He probably left a cigarette smoke somewhere in that place. And we've had another one, I can't think of his name, to come up and help us out.
Will Roberts.
Okay. And so we've had some good people to come up, and I'm quite sure you know, nice gentlemen, y'all can help us out also.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. When do you need that point of contact person by?
We can be in contact. We can send you an email tomorrow.
We have a new clerk starting Monday, so we'll probably make that.
All right, fantastic.
All right. Are there any other questions? I will thank you for coming up and joining us this evening and giving us this presentation to get us kicked off. And I look forward to working with you on getting this process finalized and redrawing these maps.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. All right, as requested, administration has not provided us with any business this evening. We greatly appreciate that. Were there any public comment signs?
No.
Awesome. We will jump on into county council comments. I'll start on my right, Mrs. Clark.
I just want to wish everyone happy, safe, blessed Thanksgiving.
Mr. Running.
That's right. Chairman, only one thought, and that is when you mentioned the new clerk and throwing her into the redistricting thing, that may be a little tough for somebody that's brand new.
We can discuss.
Right, just right there. No other comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Youngs.
No.
Sanders.
You know, for everyone having a good Thanksgiving.
Just a couple of things. We did have a loss of a couple people that were close to the county. The family of Kelly Turner, who worked in our public works department, she passed, and Billy Wilson's mother passed. I want to remember them as we go into this Thanksgiving time. It's going to be hard on their family to deal with those losses, but we want to extend condolences there and also wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Carroll said, and several other council members, a happy Thanksgiving to enjoy time with your family and remember what this season truly is about. We have a lot of things to be thankful for after almost 2 years now we've been through. So hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving and eats too much turkey. That concludes council comments. I'm going to call council into recess so that we can go into our workshop, and then we will reconvene at the conclusion of that workshop. So with that being said, the time is 5:49. We will go into recess. All right, time is now 6:08. We will call this Lawrence County Council workshop on November 23rd to session. I will call on Mr. Higgs, County Administrator, to present us with an ARPA local fiscal recovery fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I apologize for sitting here not walking around. Whenever I do a presentation, I like to be on my feet. So this is a unique, I'm gonna have to get another microphone, but so bear with me as I plug through this. The first thing out the gate, what I wanted to do is sort of go through what ARPA is, how it's defined. There's been a lot of speculation out there in the community of how much the counties get and what we're going to do with it. So I want to start this whole thing, give it a definition and emphasize that this is a discussion to get the idea of the direction council wants to move forward on this. But I put together a preliminary plan on something that could be a proposal, but I want to get some feedback and some direction and guidance from this council. So first of all, what is ARPA? Utilize the Government Financial Officers Association, the GFOA, for their definition. I thought they gave a pretty precise definition and some guidelines. And I'd implore you to keep going back to this page as we talk about potential projects, programs to implement, because especially the middle part, the eligible uses of these funds. But to rewind for a second, the American Rescue Plan was passed back in March of 2021 this year, and it was $350 billion in additional funding for state and local governments. The state funding portion is $195 billion, with $25.5 billion distributed equally among the 50 states, and the remaining amount distributed based on the formula. So the local funding portion of this is approximately $130 billion. For the county, that's $65 billion allocated based on population. So Lawrence County, we're anticipating to get approximately $13 million in two allocations. The first is already hit in approximately $6.5 million. With the second allocation, we're looking somewhere around the beginning of the year, maybe even into April, that time frame. So think about this. I like to talk in phases. This is phase one. We're going to look at phase two at the beginning of the year, and I'll come back to that and explain my plan if it's accepted by council. But the eligible uses of these funds, there's a revenue replacement for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19 public health emergency. Relative to revenues collected in the most recent fiscal year prior to the emergency. Secondly, COVID-19 expenditures or negative economic impacts of COVID-19, and this includes assistance to small business, households, and hard-hit industries and economic recovery. Premium pay for essential workers, and finally, investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, which that last point is really the driving force behind this legislation, was to invest it into infrastructure. And then you can read what some of the restrictions are, but the end date, the target date, all the funds have to be spent by the end of the calendar year 2024 for the GFOA. So the plan that I've envisioned is we have $6.5 million in the bank right now. For that $6.5 million, I would ask for council to look at capital expenditures, things that would generally be spent out of our budget that we pass every year. The reason being, we can take care of these capital expenditures and offset what would generally have to be accounted for in the budget that would allow us to do more with that money without these government restrictions on it. So on the front end, you're investing that capital. Later on, you have a bigger ball of wax, if that makes sense, to work with in your budget. For the second $6.5 million, especially with local interest, nonprofits, things of that nature, work on a proposal plan. We would start toward the beginning of the year accepting applications and proposals in written form. I would ask that the council set up a committee, for example, to review those proposals, and then have sort of like the capital project sales tax plan, where people come and present their proposals after it makes it through the first round, and we determine, first of all, does it meet the guidelines? Does it meet the criteria? Second of all, we can figure out how those plug into the criteria and spending after that. That would be the second half of that proposal, $6.5 million. So what I did, if you flip to the next page, I had a plan based on capital needs and what we're looking at countywide. I'll start with EMS and fire. EMS and fire were instrumental in the fight against COVID and still are. They're responding to this day. So one major need are ambulances. I've reached out. There are 3 ambulances available that we can have on the ground in 2 weeks. And if you watch the news, it's almost impossible to get a vehicle right now. There's a wait list in some cases, months. We have 3 available to us today. And by the time we strike them and get them out there on the street, they could be on the ground fighting COVID in 2 weeks. The cost of those 3 ambulances are $750,000. And again, these are rough approximations. This is just to kind of give you an overview and to determine our path forward as we start planning. The second one, renovate Ecom Fire from Medic Squad 1. Now I'm going to ask some of our EMS employees to come up here and hold up a map so you can visualize this. I'm sorry for this state-of-the-art technology. Did you want to point to Ecom and show where it would move?
Is
No, it's up there, right there.
right here in it. Right there. Yeah, right here.
So the purpose of this plan, as we start talking about these stations, as you ride around the county, you'll notice a lot of our EMS personnel are in mobile homes, and our equipment is out in the elements and the rain and everything else. This is a spending proposal that would allow personnel to move into a stage facility. The sprinkler to allow for them to work shifts of 24 hours and get that equipment out of the rain inside the heated bays to protect that investment that the county spends money on. And the purpose, again, is to utilize existing structures rather than to start building from the ground up. So we're renovating what we already have to accommodate those personnel. So that will be the first step. The second one is Medic 2 to Mile and Fire. So right now, Medic 2 is at the top of Clinton. This would move them to the southern part. Now, if you're like me, my first question is, well, that's going to increase response time. There is a Prisma truck currently in Clinton's fire station right there in the middle of downtown. So we have a very significant, we're on Johnny on the spot when we get a call in Clinton. But what this is going to do is take that squad out of that mobile home and put them down to the southern part of Clinton. It's also going to help fill some of the gap as you move closer down. So we're really kind of putting our personnel more in the fight as those calls come along. What it'll also do is allow us, if we want to look toward expansion to the other side of Clinton where the station currently is, we can then go ahead and this would get those personnel moved out while we start plans for building it up better in the future. One of the last ones is Squad 2 to Joanna 3. So the beautiful part about this is it takes that, can you point to it one more time, Kevin, where they're currently at? It would take them out of this facility and put them closer toward the interstate. So as we experience, I think everybody in here has been stuck in traffic on 26. This puts them really into the fight in a quick manner to help them respond as there's traffic accidents and things out on the interstate. Finally, Remodel the Medic 4 station is at the very southern part. It's in a dire need of a little bit of an uplift. So this would get that cleaned up and have a great facility for our folks to be stationed at. Any questions on that portion? I know that's a lot to throw at you at one moment.
You said, if you could get 3 of these, 5 ambulance, these ambulance today,
Yes, ma'am.
and they all new.
Brand new. Well, what they are demo units, they're brand new. They are the top of the line, best of the best ambulances. I know this because of these gentlemen right here. They're the professionals. They told us what they needed. These are the best. And
It's the same manufacturer that we just purchased last year.
and to give you a reference point, the one you purchased earlier in the year, we're still waiting to get that one in right now. So these are 3 we can go ahead and get on the ground responding to COVID. With 2 weeks time frame, I think that's fair. They got to put our logos and everything on them. It take about 2 weeks.
I know, I want to see us move in that direction, but I also want to see us move in a more cleaner environment direction also, with maybe some I would like to see an election. Yeah, man.
I would love to also. I haven't seen one yet. We'll look into
Elon
that.
Musk, see if he can do it. Elon Musk will give us.
Oh, man, but I really want us to move more into, a cleaner environment on some things. I think we're still, looking at things and buying things that are basically eventually gonna move out of place, because I really feel like the future for any kind of transportation is going toward electric.
You're
And
right.
I want us to be on the front of what's gonna happen in the future. And not just, buy just because we are able to purchase. I would like us to make sure we think about the future also.
And this, if we move forward these 3 ambulances, we have 3 out of service right now that are in horrible shape. This gets us back into the fight immediately. So I'm very passionate about that, if you can't tell, because again, as people's loved ones and
I'm passionate about service. I
yeah,
am.
and this is a core service. So
And maybe with some other money, we can get everything.
I'll be glad to look into it.
Work on it.
I'm curious myself. Thank you. Any other questions about these stations? Yes, sir.
All right, so, let me see if I can understand. This is the first time we're seeing this.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm not accustomed to spending $60 million on one sitting.
And I'm not asking you to authorize the spending or anything. This is a discussion.
So the Joanna circumstance, okay, that we're talking about moving it out to the fire station was on the interstate.
Correct.
And we're talking about having an emergency circumstance out there with EMS as opposed to fire service, that it'll be associated with the fire department, but it'll be EMS services out there.
It'll be both.
It would be both. It would have accommodations for future fire and EMS. We had to put a personnel fire outlet. It would be built or with the accommodation. All 3 locations would be built with accommodations for both EMS and fire.
I had been hearing, some about your plans for this through the grapevine, and this is incongruent with what I was thinking. Not that I was told wrong, it's just that I misunderstood. And I was thinking that changes were going to be in the town of Joanna. But, there's no question, since I use that part of the interstate to come in and out that exit as my home entrance and exit to Clinton, actually, that there's a lot of stuff going on out there on the interstate. And it's just the quickest way to respond to everything, literally from Newberry to the Walmart distribution practically.
And it only puts it about 4 minutes response from here back to the center of Joanna. It's not a long distance from that.
And the beautiful part about this is we're not building new infrastructure. We're not just throwing money at new facilities. We're taking care of what we currently have, and we're just upfitting it and making it usable to accommodate the core services that our citizens.
That's fine for now. Thank you.
Any other questions? Second one, you doing the rest of the audience? Thank you, guys. Next iteration is the sheriff's office. One being which a command trailer. If in the early onset of COVID-19, if you read by Prisma, there was a triage center set up there. Thanks to the city of Clinton and their due diligence, we had a air-conditioned tents out there to accommodate an immediate triage, testing, those types of things. It would have been nice to have a command trailer. We always, a lot of the calls I see that Lawrence County experiences are missing people, especially with this being a heavily forested county. We get a lot of missing people. Having a command trailer set up out there is instrumental as far as incident command, setting up a battle plan to go out there and look for somebody, a central location. Right now, we're having to borrow Greenvilles whenever we need one. This will be a chance for us to get our own. So heaven forbid, if we ever have to set up another triage area or rally a bunch of, force multiplication from other agencies to go look for somebody in the woods, this could be used as a command post. And again, it's a I'm not asking for a bus that has an engine and you have to work on operations and maintenance and those huge overhead costs. This is a trailer to be pulled behind, which we do have vehicles capable of pulling those. The other part of it is 3 patrol vehicles, if you will, that are ready to go out there and respond to calls as needed. Again, this is a capital plan to alleviate some of those budget monies that we would normally have to budget.
And they like to have electric car.
And I tell you what,
Start acting like, hey,
I'd like to look at one.
I really would like to see us use something. I like to see us move forward, to seeing some cleaner.
Most of the experts,
And I know we only have one, I don't know, Lawrence has got one charger, I think that's all.
that's the,
I've been talking.
yeah, I think we only have maybe a couple of
Are
them.
like plug-in chargers.
The charging station, I think,
There's 2 out there.
it's too.
But the problem,
No.
the problem where we're at right now and talking to people, because I have been looking into it, it's interesting. There's a lot of issues. Number one, the cost, how rates are figured out. So if you went to plug your vehicle, how much it's going to cost. Number 2, the standardization of those chargers. So a plug for a Tesla may not be the same as a Ford. So you may have a Ford and go to that charger and it may not accommodate it. So the industry as a whole has a lot of standardization to do to figure out how to make that leap into the next era. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
We in South Carolina, we have about 4 car automobile dealerships to be young, manufacturers, thank you. And, Mercedes, BMW, Volvo, and I'm thinking they're working on them right now. And I think it's something, and I think I've heard about the charging station and how they have the different plugs and stuff. And I think we can accommodate those if you get the plug. And I appreciate the city of Lawrence having one too, because I think it would bring people into your county also. It's also a tourism attractive thing, because if I have a Tulsa or whatever, I could come through and charge up for a couple of minutes.
I'll be riding with you. I've never ridden one. I'd love to.
But I think there are gonna be some incentives out there for people to try it. And I want us to be on the cutting edge to look at some of those things for this county. And
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
I will say that electric is interesting to look at, but the technology is where we are nowhere even close to be able to support that. And for one, our officers would not have time to wait for 4 hours to charge the vehicle to go out and protect the citizens of the county. So my comment would be that gas has worked for 120 years. I think we'll be fine going forward with it.
120 years, it won't be here. I think we have to think outside the box, and I think that's where we lose something when we don't get ready to think outside the box.
I'll be glad to research that and come budget time, I'll bring a proposal as far as what it looked like or whatever my findings are. I'd be glad to discuss it.
It's hard to support.
But moving forward, just in the plan, so there's the command trailer and the 3 vehicles there. Going on to the corner, we heard a proposal several meetings back with the needs for those power loads, the lifts to help, do their job. I took the same dollar amount in their proposal and plugged it into here. Now we are working on some alternate plans, things like that. I'm working with the coroner's office. They've been a tremendous help tackling this problem, but just for a placeholder in this initial plan to see what it could look like, I used their same request. Human resources, we're moving into a self-serve Paylocity system to help out personnel as far as clocking in and out, managing their time, requesting time off, benefits analysis, all of those types of things are moving in that system. We did the payroll system on the front end, council approved, and we're moving forward with that. This would be the backside for the HR suite to help people manage, especially in the world of, today everything's so remote and Zoom meetings and everything else. This moves our ability to help service our employees on the back end from the HR standpoint. And that's what the 3-year contract will look like. The one I'm really excited about is an in-house nurse practitioner. We got a quote on what that would look like for county employees as well as people dependents on their benefits plan. So if you're like me, when I schedule a doctor's visit, it takes at least half a day off of work to travel to wherever that office is, wait in the waiting room, read a magazine or two, and finally get seen. This would have somebody in our county facility, so our employees would have that resource to go visit that nurse practitioner, get acute, simple things looked at, get a prescription if need be, and extend it to their dependents as well, or anybody on their benefits plan. That's a 3-year contract, what that would look like. There are 2 Lawrence County water sewer projects, because again, this is an infrastructure bill that focused on water sewer infrastructure. I work with Mr. Field as far as 2 immediate projects that he'd like to see come to fruition. There's maps in there, and those are there. Finally, county facility upgrades, and I'll come back to the dollars and where all this adds up. Finally, there's county facility upgrades. We're working on getting voters registration over in the Winn-Dixie building. We need to come up with a better name than Winn-Dixie, but we're gonna call it Winn-Dixie for right now to get them over in that building. To guarantee access, by the time they need to get up there and operational, to ensure the continuity in those elections, to make sure people go get registered in a safe manner, to be social distance, all of that stuff, as well as other facilities at Hillcrest, to make sure we put in those safety measures for all of our employees, that workforce. So all of that together, out of the $6.5 million in that first allocation, this is an idea of what an initial capital investment of $6.1 billion would look like and where it would get the county. And I'm open to any, like I said, this is a discussion. This isn't a proposal I'm asking you to act on. This is a discussion.
I know the facility that the Winn-Dixie facility, I have to call it that for everybody upgrading. I would like to also look at solar panels. Any new kind of ways to move into.
Personally, and Thomas, thank you, thanks for doing all this. I think you've done a great job, and there's obviously a lot of things that we need to spend money on, but I guess for one, I'm coming from the perspective that a lot of this, for one, this is free money, and my political views are different than some, perhaps on council, when I say that we were given monopoly money really to go spend on projects. But if we are going to spend it on something, I would like to see something included in this for our first responders. I've seen some of the other municipalities across not only Lawrence County, but Greenville, Greenwood, Newberry, and they've had something in there for the first responders, a little bonus, something to that effect. I know we've done a lot for our county employees already this year with some of the pay increases, but still, I would like to see us do something for them, and maybe even extend it. I'd be open to discussing it, maybe extending it to all the county employees, but breaking it down by tiers. First responders, we get a probably bigger chunk of that, but then breaking it down by tiers for some of the other county offices as well. And I think with what we're getting, that would be definitely feasible. So I've been breaking down the numbers as well, just to see what that would look like. I think we can do it easily for under $2 million. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. But
Out of curiosity, what do those tiers look like?
I am currently working on it. I'll have something, probably hard copies for every council member by the next council meeting.
I agree and value our employees. We have done lots for them over the past budget cycle, and I know they're very appreciative. My only fear of doing a tiered process would be that's us telling one employee they're worth more than another one. While I do agree there were some that were physically in interaction with the disease, there were some more in a different fight. For example, our treasurer's office through one bank teller window kept this entire county running for 6-8 months, however long it took us to open the facilities back up. The folks we have in our 911 center, I would consider a lot of those folks frontline workers, even though in the normal sense of the word, they might not necessarily be considered a frontline worker. But a lot of our county employees and positions and departments that aren't normally thought of as being on the front, were part of that. Billy Wilson sitting here in front of us, Assistant Director of Public Works and Fleet Maintenance, but yet he was the one that made sure we had all the plexiglass and everything was installed when it was supposed to. He wouldn't necessarily be considered a frontline worker normally, but he was one in the middle of the fight, just like all the rest of them, and like all of our wonderful EMS and sheriffs and fire folks were. So I do think we should be careful on categorizing the quality of employee that we have, because I think all of them, as we've stated in the past, are valuable, and all of them are essential, and we should be careful as we go down that path.
My rebuttal to that, Mr. Chairman, would be the job responsibilities are so different. And I think when you sign up to be a clerk to court, or you are signing up to do something that you're not putting your life on the line for. So I think there's a big difference as far as county employees, as far as what you're signing up to do. And the men in blue, they sign up to protect us. The EMS, and we got them here, the fire. Those guys are putting their lives more at risk than any other county employee. So I value that as far as what we're discussing here for what these funds are going to be used for. As it says, it says essential workers, which could mean anybody. But I look at those guys as the ones that were really the ones leading that charge, leading from the front throughout this whole thing. And again, going back to the fact that this is free money. I mean, if a county employee receives anything out of this, I would hope that they'd be grateful, but also to be understanding that there are other people in this county doing a job that is more risky. And I feel like a riskier job deserves more attention.
Couple of thoughts, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I guess that, and I get the idea that this is a fungibility test of putting it into this. There's another tranche coming. I get all that, but that there have been more sewer projects, more urgently talked about than I see listed here. Without getting into exactly what they are, this is like about half of what I was expecting to be spent on that, maybe a third.
Yes, sir, I can address that if you'd like me to. I'm taking, Mr. Field gave me a whole proposal of what, about 5, 6 different projects. This is the first iteration of those projects. Again, this isn't all of our ARPA money. This is the first 6.5 mils. So the next proposal would include a substantial amount more of those. This is just, and he can explain if he likes to, but this is just urgently, like, one is to go ahead and start pre-construction on one and a match on the other. So these were just immediate needs. That's
the way that I'm looking at this. The fungibility argument means that we move these dollars in and we trade dollars for dollars. Sewer is the rate limiting step of economic development, and that we're not trading dollars for dollars there. We're hoping to multiply them, actually. We're not looking for a 10%, we're looking for a 10x. And so, I'm inclined to think that that's underrepresented in this budget, and we'll talk more about that as we go. I wanted to go back to a theme that Luke was talking about earlier, and that we've got a problem on the fire side, okay? And the problem is that the demographic of the volunteer firemen is not as healthy as it was 35 years ago. It's not going to be healthier 35 years from now, okay? So we've got to have a vision for how we're going to be able to maintain a volunteer fire force going forward, because I don't see a time in my life where that's not an important thing for us. So I've been on this odyssey to Orangeburg and Florence and Newberry and Marion and Pickens and other places, and there are themes that are coming up. The people who are volunteers want to have better training. They want training. They want to be trained at what they're doing. They want to go in with the skills to be able to do the job that they've got. And we don't have the training facilities that I've seen in other counties. Okay, we don't have anything near what they've got. Okay, and so when you're responding to what a volunteer wants, that they want the tools to do the job. This really seems like a fairly modest request of somebody to go into battle, and the first thing they ask after they volunteer to give up their life is you give me a gun? Won't you give me a little body armor? Won't you help me out a little bit here? And so they're doing that for us. And that I want to see a vision for where we're going to continue to attract and retain volunteers to the degree that they can be. And I don't think we're there. I don't think we're anywhere close to it, okay? And that the second thing is that they want their equipment to work. That they're showing up as a volunteer, and you're supposed to supply the chainsaw, and the chainsaw doesn't have a chain, so all they're asking is give me the tools to do the job I'm volunteering to do. And that we're not on track for that. And that this is a chance in every way, shape, and form to begin to have that vision and to fund it. And in fairness to people who have been in positions of responsibility, we don't have the money to do this. So I'm not so much being critical and acting like I just thought of this. I think it's been thought of for the last 20 years, but we now have the ability to do something about it. And that this is, even in the first tranche, the vision is not here that needs to be here relative to that issue. So those are the two things that I would like to comment about, is that the sewer infrastructure is a 10x and not a 1-to-1 trade-off. And that not just the spending of the money on the fire side, but a vision for the whole way that we intend to maintain a volunteer fire force going forward.
I see what you are presenting to us, in that with the first half of this 13 million is that we do things for the county, and the second part, we're going to do things for the citizens. I'm trying to make sure we are being inclusive as well as having a vision and moving forward also. So I want to have a little bit more on an in-house nurse practitioner. Where have you seen that work in a county? Have you seen it, or it's just?
I haven't seen it work in accounting, but I see it in private industry all the time. It increased, especially foreign private industry, it increased job performance, it increased morale, it increased those people who are hesitant to go to the doctor to begin with. It gives them an outlet to go get that medical assistance they need in-house. And again, this is, my idea with this is sort of an approach. So this is a spending plan up front on capital. We then, but this isn't an overnight. If y'all told me to go do this today, I'd laugh very hard. Especially as we talk about buildings and stuff, it's going to take task orders from architects and engineers to make sure we do things the correct way. There's only a couple things in here that I could move forward and go with today. But as we go into this next year, we start the budget discussions at the same time. So those expenditures, like Mr. Tribble just pointed out with fire, we can start tackling that in a systematic approach. But for the fight against COVID and those capital expenditures up front, we can invest that into our medical personnel who are on the front lines, like Mr. Rankin just said, fighting that fight on an everyday basis, along with our first responders and the fire service, because they go to medical calls. Same with our sheriff's office. But this will alleviate some of those expenditures as we get into that budget process. We can sit down with our volunteer stations, as well as our county fire service here, and figure out what they need to really truly get into the fight. Because as Mr. Tribble said, that's the systematic problem with volunteerism. It's something you can't throw money at. It's something you have to have a relegated training system. I'm on the fire academy training roster. I've gone through a lot of those classes. There are classes out there in a systematic approach to get people certified to where they need to be. But we have to be smart and strategize how we do that.
I want to add on to the Senator's comments on the nurse practitioner. My company uses one of those. They're in a conglomerate with 3 other industries in our business park, but a lot of our personnel are outside. So we actually have a telehealth option with that nurse practitioner. I think it'd be beneficial to see if that's a possibility as we do this, to have a telehealth, especially for the dependents more than anything. So if you have a sick child at home that's having to drag them to town, you could telehealth from your living room. So if we go down this path, I'd like for us to look at that as well.
Mr. Chairman, I have a lot of thoughts. When I was mayor, my son was young, and he asked me one time, he said, Dad, when you were mayor, what law did you make? And so I started thinking about, I didn't make that law against bank robbery, and I didn't have anything to do with divorce law and that kind of stuff. What we did is we budgeted funds of the district that came in through the taxes. And that's our responsibility. So I'm not cool on having a committee stand between us. I think it seems like it's a similar thing to the sales tax, but I see it as being different. I'm not going to be interested in having a committee stand between us and dividing up this money without fighting. So that's our job, in my judgment.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? How would you like to see us proceed forward from this point?
I mean, as you see, this is a total shot in the dark. I put this together with no guidance from council whatsoever. I looked at a plan of how I could, if I were a financial advisor, so to say, how you could invest this money and then in turn, look at your next iteration of spending and on to the next, and on to the next. It's the three-pronged spending bill by the federal government. This is the first part of it. What I'd like to do is continue those conversations with council to figure out your vision, because again, it's not my vision, it's your vision, and you represent your constituents and what you'd like to see and how you'd like this money spent. And I'll be glad to facilitate that. So, but one ask in that is the ambulances. We have them available. Like you said, you authorized one earlier this year. We still don't have it, or probably next year before you get it. This is an expenditure where we can get them now and get them on the ground fighting COVID. So if you like, I'd like to bring that purchase order to council at the next meeting and request that expenditure.
Vote on it this evening so you can have it. What do you need to do about it?
You can give me that authorization to execute that contract for the
Not to exceed.
Well, I'll make a.
We gotta go back to regular session.
I mean, executive session.
We're in a workshop.
Okay.
We'll go back into that. Same time.
May I ask how many, sorry, may I ask how many ambulances we currently have?
Yeah, roughly 12. Got, there's a couple spares in there too, but.
So we'd be increasing our fleet by 20%.
We do recycling.
We have two out of service. We've got two out of service right now.
Okay.
Is there still a trade-in option on any that are functional?
We won't get much for them.
Okay.
We are putting these online auction.
Okay.
To get rid of them. So we'll be able to turn these things around on auction in the next 30 days. By we get. That's already been checked.
You good with that?
Yes. Okay. That's fine.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns related to the ARP allocations?
I would still like you to check into those back cars. The only reason I say that is that in Greenville also, Greenville bus line run off electric buses.
I'll be more than happy.
And I just know it's something out there, and I just like to see us just do something just unique, because this money, I don't know about it being free, but this money is here to be used, and since we have it, I would like to see us use it very constructively and make sure that we can do some things that gonna cause our town to move into the future.
I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Higgs, for taking time. I'm sure it took you a while to put this together, working with multiple departments and whatnot on some things that might not already been on their radar, putting it all together for us. It's a big task, and then there'll be some changes as we go through it. I hope you'll take the recommendations and suggestions from council members tonight and bring us a revised one, and we'll deliberate that one and then move on to the next one. So thank you for your due diligence on that. So, no one else has any comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn this workshop.
To adjourn the workshop, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tribble, second by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. We are adjourned from the workshop. Time being 6:48, I will call the regular call session of council back to order. We're now back open in regular session. Is there any other business to be done in regular sessions?
Chair, I'd like to move that we authorize our administrative purchase reanalysis based on the information we have received and not to go over whatever the said amount that we have for those three.
We have a motion, Ms. Anderson, to allow the county administrator to execute a contract to purchase 3 ambulances not to exceed $750,000
Designate the source. Source
from the ARP funds.
Under the AR. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Anderson and a second by Mrs. Clark. Is there any discussion on this matter?
Do those include power loads?
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your right hand. 7-0. All right. Are there any other council members that wish to make comments before we adjourn the meeting? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adopt. Go ahead.
I want to make sure that we got some technology things in there for the county as well as for the citizens as well as for the employees.
And I would like to clarify by saying that the free money we're getting is not necessarily free. I'll be paying for it, my grandkids will be paying for it for probably many years, so. Just to clarify.
All right. I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Rankin. All in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0.